Hello, and welcome to Insight Futures podcast, Time for Action. This is week 2 of our 12-week countdown to COP26, the 26th annual UN Climate Change Conference of Parties, which will be hosted in Glasgow from the 31st of October to the 12th of November. The focus for this week's episode is vision. CEO Doug Morwood speaks with Jim Brannan, Head of Supply Chain Development at Balfour Beatty, where they discuss North Star and Near Star visions and how you navigate that vision around unforeseen obstacles, such as the pandemic, and especially in light of the recent IPCC report on climate change, how does this affect our visions for the future? So, let's get started. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy this week's episode of Time for Action.
Hi there, I'm here with Jim Brannan, who's Head of Supply Chain Development across the Balfour Beatty Group, the largest construction company here in the UK. We're going to discuss vision at a personal level, a company level, and even a wider context. Hi, Jim. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your role?
Hi, Doug. Good to see you again. I am Jim Brannan. I was, up until March this year, I was the head of procurement for Balfour Beatty Regional Business in Scotland, and also Balfour Beatty Kilpatrick, the M&E division of Balfour Beatty across the UK. I switched roles, as I said, back at the end of March into one of supply chain development, as I'm very keen to look at the ways that we can develop our supply chain in a better way. They can turn up in a more informed way, and how they can bring about a different approach to how they deliver their works on and across all of our projects. In particular, we're keen to understand innovation and how they can bring innovation and how we can help them develop that innovation from maybe a concept to an actual deliverable. So that's my role now.
Thanks, Jim. So we're here to discuss vision. What is vision, and how necessary it is in today's world. So what is vision all about? Well, a vision is a mental picture of a result you want to achieve. A picture so clear and strong that it will help you make that result real. Unfortunately, the typical vision statement is fuzzy and inspires only boredom. I mean, Jim, how important do you think vision is in your own life and in terms of that anticipated future, and also at a company level?
On a personal level, I've always found that if I can visualize where I want to be and when I want to be there, so from an early part of my career, did I want to be in supply chain management? Yes, I did. Where did I visualize myself that I was going to be? Yes, I wanted to stay. I started out as a buyer, but I wanted to go beyond just being a buyer. I wanted to be a senior buyer. I wanted to be a purchasing manager, and ultimately, I wanted to head up a division that in procurement I could deliver significant results to an organisation. And over the many years on the different companies I've worked with, I've been able to do that. But I had to visualise myself achieving that, whether it be in engineering, whether it be in electronics, whether it be in software, whether it be in construction where I am today, or whether it be in oil and gas where I was previously. So I was able to visualise how I was going to get there. When it comes to in the workplace, visualising where we are today and where we need to be is always important. That says, well, I've got a vision, but I need a roadmap to work out how am I going to get there. So for me, it's important to then develop a roadmap, because if you don't, any road could get you there and you could end up in the wrong place, not with the vision that you started out with, but with something completely different.
So in terms of a vision as a North Star, just say some immovable destination point, and maybe for the pragmatists, a Near Star, how do we get there in, what's the kind of more near-term milestone in service of that North Star vision? Does vision sometimes not appeal to pragmatists, and equally are sometimes too pragmatic in the short term that we lose sight of the long-term destination?
I think what you have to be mindful of is that whilst you might have a vision, you need others to be supportive of that vision and work with you to achieve it. But you'll also get the assassins coming from left field that might look to derail your vision for reasons best known to them, or even things that may happen with your control such as a pandemic, that then takes that vision and then you have to change course. So I think that from a pragmatic point of view, whilst you can have a clear vision of where you want to be, always be wary that things can happen that may result in you having to change the way that you go about achieving the vision that you had, or even might be that you slightly alter what the vision needs to now become because of other events, if that makes sense. Pandemic being one where clearly that altered many of our visions of what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, I suppose the rare ability to balance that continuity and change is closely linked to the ability to develop a vision. And I suppose vision provides guidance about what to preserve and what to change. We are in a significant disruption with the pandemic, even with the emerging situation in Afghanistan just now. And obviously the imminent or the increasing challenges around the climate emergency just go to increase that sense of complexity, ambiguity, uncertainty. A clarity of vision for the future, coupled with purpose and values. So I suppose vision, mission or purpose and values, is that a really strong combination that most organizations should endeavor to focus on or to create with their staff in order to, I suppose, motivate and inspire, so people aren't just turning up to their organization with best endeavor. They're actually got a destination point, as you say. If you haven't got that kind of destination point, any path will take you there, kind of thing. So how important is vision coupled with purpose and values, or how often does that kind of melt into kind of empty rhetoric?
I think every one of them is important in their own way to get you to where you want and need to be as an organization. I think the structure in any organization needs to provide for their staff, their leaders, a way in how they can express themselves in their work, because people spend an awful lot of time in their workplace. They need to feel valued, but above all, they need to know their purpose and meaning. Why am I here? What is it that is expected of me? Where is this going to lead to? What is it at the end of the day is going to get me motivated to get out of my bed and go to my workplace? Or it might be that they're remote and working remotely these days, but they need a purpose and they need a sense of being and part of something that's important and part of something that's leading to something bigger. And collectively, we as an organization can get there because we have the roadmap, because it's been shared with us, and also it's absolutely clear what my role is in that roadmap. Yeah.
So again, it's this sense of individual vision or purpose as combined with an organizational purpose, and I suppose the values, how we behave when I suppose nobody's looking. And I suppose the purpose and the values should be absolute. They shouldn't change in light of any external disruptions. Maybe the vision, as you say, you might have to adjust because of these external conditions or context. But purpose and values, the why and how, is fundamentally important. Do you see that that's something that's present in your own organisation and others that you've worked in?
Certainly within Balfour Beatty, the values that we have and share and continuously promote within the organisation, within the senior leadership, with our CEO, he absolutely stands by the values of the organisation. He promotes them very strongly throughout the organisation, both internally, but also externally with his peer group and with government. So he's very influential in terms of his role as CEO. But his leadership team, he is particularly strong on his values and making sure that his leadership team not only talk about the values, but they live the values that they promote. And I can say that with absolute certainty within Balfour Beatty. That's how they behave, which is great from an organisation point of view, and it gives the employees a real sense of purpose and being as well, in terms of those values.
I suppose these are the softer cultural aspects of an organisation, but are hugely powerful and help differentiate that organisation in a hugely competitive environment. I think many people assume wrongly that a company exists simply to make money. While it's this an important result of a company's existence, most people want to make a contribution to society and generally do something of value as well. There has to be some meaning around what you're spending quite a long part of your life doing, is working. So in light of the kind of current context, where maybe there are adjustments going on around vision, around the destination, the final destination of the long-term goals of the organisation, the idea that as we said earlier, the purpose and values don't change. They're the why and the how. Is there something where you see a challenge between organizations that are adjusting to the immediate short-term future around dealing with the pandemic, and maybe the near-term future of the climate emergency, and possibly the difficulty of the CEOs or the senior leadership team and the broader organization saying, actually, we don't know how to address this? Does vision, purpose, and values provide some sort of navigational context for that?
Yes, they do, and I think that we're as a business or businesses have got now to step up to some real transformational change in the way that they operate and the way that they deliver. For us in construction, the projects that we deliver, we have a huge social responsibility for the communities in which we work and where we deliver our projects. We want to make sure that, above all, we deliver them safely, but we need to leave and want to leave a kind of lasting legacy from a social responsibility point of view. How do we do that? We can do that in many different ways, in terms of being able to engage with the local communities, engage with social enterprise, create employment, create opportunities for training, certainly with apprenticeships, and we promote those very, very much in terms of the local content that we want to provide. But also one of the big things that we really are looking to do now is make sure that when we deliver a project, we do it in the most sustainable way possible. We're bringing together hundreds of different people, trades, companies to a project to deliver something that has to be delivered to the client exactly what they've asked for. But more than that, it has to be the most sustainable project that probably we've ever delivered each and every time. So we get learnings from each project and take it on to the next project, so that we get better and better, and our supply chain gets better at what they do. And in terms of looking at how do we decarbonize that whole supply chain, that's one of the big challenges that we have, that our supply chain has, and that they're looking for help from a company like Balfour Beatty, who has much more significant resources than the SMEs that we'll engage with, and we want to reach out and help them to become better at what they do and help them deliver a more carbon neutral solution to the projects that they're delivering on our behalf, or they're working with us on delivering on our behalf. So there's lots of challenge, lots of conflict, because you've got not always will be the solution is the cheapest solution, but it will be the most cost effective solution in the long term. And that's always a balance that we're trying to juggle with, to convince others that the right thing to do is look at the long term as opposed to just the short term gain. You need to look at the long term gain and the long term gain in terms of that climate emergency that we need to be delivering now. We've got all these obligations that we're making for, whether it be the UK government or the Scottish government, but we need to be doing it now. Time for action is now. Not grand pledges that are going to be delivered in 10 years' time, but we need to be doing it today.
Yeah, you mentioned the combining the kind of integration and optimization of a lot of moving parts in any built environment project. Do you think that now more than ever, yourselves and your supply chain are having to deliver more than the functional built environment or infrastructure that clients are requesting, but probably engaging with them at a vision level around that, future ability, that, designed and built to last or to adapt, and that clients' visions need to be a really strong part of the motivation of how you link and connect. As Simon Sinek talked about, start with why, and if organizations are connecting on their why, it seems to be beyond just a functional, or not when I say just a functional delivery. Many projects go over budget, over time. There are difficulties around post-occupancy evaluations and handovers, and we see challenges around Grenfell and other suboptimal outcomes. Is there something around the backdrop of even the IPCC climate report, which was fairly devastating in its message, a code red for humanity? That, how do you think organizations should respond? And should climate action become a key part of an organization's vision, whether it's your clients, yourselves, and your supply chain?
I think it's an absolute prerequisite now going into any project that we are looking at. How do we make sure that everything that we're doing is leading to, whether it be a reduction in carbon, whether it be a reduction in waste, whether it be a reduction in energy, whether it be an increase in efficiency and productivity, all of that needs to be at the forefront of the project. And we can only do that if we do it in a more collaborative way, not just with our supply chain, but with the client and the designer as part of that, because that's where the real prize is to be had, right up front, where we can design it in a way that it will be using the most appropriate materials. It's to the best design that fits with how we want to either manufacture it on-site or off-site, that allows us to then capture everything that we're doing in a digital way. That means that we learn from that project, and we can take that learning to the next project and the next project, so that what we're doing is we're continually improving and reducing our content of our carbon, our content of our energy, our content of our productivity, and really making sure that we are just continually improving. That's what we need to do. And we can only do that through collaboration and trust, which is a key element for me in anything that is being delivered by our projects.
Thanks, Jim. So can you tell me a little bit more about Balfour Beatty's vision for the future and the impacts expected from the recent publication of your sustainability strategy?
What we have done is we have published our strategy, which supports our Build to Last strategy, which is building new futures. It's there and available for everyone to see. We've made some big, bold, ambitious commitments that we'll deliver on that. We're going to be measuring ourselves against science-based targets on carbon reduction and emissions, and we are rolling that out to our key strategic supply chain as well, because they need to enable us to deliver that, because they're an important part of what we do. So the vision is clear within the strategy itself, as well as looking at how we reduce our emissions and reduce our carbon footprint. We're also committing to helping 1 million people in terms of their communities and what we do in terms of the legacy that we leave. So we've got as I said, big ambitious targets. We've got a very clear strategy, and this has to be reported and will be reported on in each of our kind of financial updates to the market, to the city. So, we've really put our we've put our money where our mouth is.
You've tied your performances and incentives to these social and environmental sustainable goals and targets, as you say. I suppose that envisaged future about setting or identifying these bold stretch goals and articulating that vivid description of what it would mean to achieve them is a really strong step to, I suppose, engage and galvanise and attract and align and not just internally but with your broader supply chain as well. What's the kind of response you've had so far from people within the organisation and also externally within your supply chain?
Organisationally, it's been very positive. Everybody gets it. Everybody's like, excited by, again, the ambitious targets we set. We're don't get me wrong, it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. And externally, our supply chain, when we shared it with them, and we did an event back in the first quarter of the year, and we shared that with them, they too were excited with what we had to say, but at the same time, they're sceptical as to how we're going to do it, how we're going to achieve it, what is it that we need to do. We've got lots of ideas, but you need to listen to us more in order to, deliver it. And the message, I think, came across very clearly is that from them, they're saying, we want and we need more information from you to help deliver what you're looking for, and we can do it, but you need to talk to us more, and there needs to be a bit more kind of trust in this relationship about how we can deliver something better. So that comes across, for me, it came across strong that the relationship to be built on trust and has to be strong, so that what people are willing to share, what could become, really best practice for us and for them. But there's just a reluctance, I guess, that they wanted to see. The proof is always in the pudding. Yeah. Okay. Now you've said it. Now you've shared the ambitious targets. Now you've said what you want. Now, how are you going to change and become, more transformational in what you're doing in a project? So that's a challenge for us.
So it's more, as you set these big, bold, maybe even big, hairy, audacious targets. There's something around the idea that if it's too stretched, if it's too distant, that people are saying, well, actually, that's fine, but what are you doing today and how are you turning up today? So I suppose it's a bit of a cliche, but it is a longer term goal, a 10, 20, 30 year goal, maybe. And yet the pragmatists want to see real change immediately. So if it's a journey, you really do need to take people along with you. And that is about building confidence and trust, turning up in a consistent way, an authentic way, driven by your behaviours and your purpose, I suppose. I suppose Henry Ford, back at the beginning of the 20th century, set a goal of democratizing the automobile. And then he told the world, when I'm through, everyone will have one. The horse will have disappeared from our highways. And that was an imaginative stretch at the time. And many people didn't believe that was going to happen. They knew that everybody travelled with horse and carriage or their own horses. And there's pictures. I remember one of your colleagues, Steve Petrie, in one of his presentations, showed a picture from the beginning of the century, last century in New York. And it was just horses everywhere. And then 10 years later, there was none in the picture. And it was all. So in a very short period of time, that vision materialized. Do you think we need that kind of level of almost out of touch, unreal, it seems unrealizable kind of goals to be able to deal with things like the climate emergency in order to go forward?
Well, I think we do, Doug, and I can. Today, we announced our half-year results, and our CEO, Mr. Leo Quinn, he announced today that we've joined the United Nations Race to Zero campaign. All right, which we're going even further and faster to minimise our environmental impact. So we have our 2020 carbon emissions. We will halve our 2020 carbon emissions by 2030, in line with the global race to limit rising temperatures of 1.5%. So we have now signed up to that. So not only are we being ambitious, but we've actually gone into print and we've stated it in our financial update today. So Balfour Beatty really, as the leading construction company in the UK, are really setting out our stall.
Okay, so yeah, 1.5 degrees. So in terms of the goals, the vision, these big stretch targets, how important do you think it is, or what advice would you give to younger people coming into work, not just the construction industry or Balfour Beatty, but generally speaking, just coming into work? Is it important for them to have some sense of their own future, or is that something that emerges later in life? Or do you think that those who have a clear destination are able to navigate this uncertainty far more successfully? What advice would you give to anybody coming into industry or workplaces just now?
So I've got children, young children. Well, they're not young anymore, but when I was giving them advice when they would listen to me when they were younger, I would always try and give them the advice of always look to add to your skill set. Always look and keep yourself updated with what's going on in the world around you. Keep abreast of current affairs, changing trends in industry and business, but always look to how do I improve the skills that I have for the challenges that may be coming over the hill. Today, I would challenge young people that green skills are something that really we need to be focusing on, or they should be focusing on. I attended an interesting event a week or two ago about green skills and what did people think about green skills and what those were. And it was interesting in the room. You had all these different views of what did green skills mean, and no one really had a specific view of what they were. They thought it was one thing, and then somebody would throw in something else. It was like, oh, I never thought of that. So green skills is something that, and I guess the government is really pushing as well, and academia is certainly pushing for that. So I would say that never stop learning, but green skills today will set you for the future in terms of just adding to your capabilities and how you can help develop solutions for the future for not just the construction industry, but any industry that you end up working in. And you will not, whatever industry you start working in, will not be the industry that you finish working in. And there'll be lots in between. And there'll be many companies in between that as well. So, take it from me, who's worked for, over my period of work for the last 40 odd years, I worked for 13 different companies across 6 different industries. But I was always then able to take those learnings from those industries into the next one. But then I had to keep upskilling and keep learning. And the more I learned, the better I got at my job. Simple as. Yeah. No,
that's great advice, Jim. And I think that that adaptability and agility and lifelong learning and development, I suppose, at an organizational level, to develop organizations, we really need to be able to understand what is core to each organization and what needs to change. But our change ability, our kind of innovation readiness, our learning capabilities, that's great advice in terms of how we need to, I suppose, learn new tools, new skills, new mindsets and ways of thinking in order to successfully navigate increasing uncertainty. And I suppose there's going to be, there's the highest levels of jobs, I think, available in the UK for quite a long time. So people have choices of where they want to work. And I suppose those organizations and businesses who have a clear, well-articulated and compelling vision for the future is going to be able to attract talent and people to work for them. And I suppose with COP26 coming up very shortly, that's not the destination point, that is a milestone. But we have world leaders all coming to Glasgow, not far away from where we're sitting just now. And they have to really set a vision for the future and stretch targets and goals that we're going to have to adapt to. And I suppose that's a real test of our leaders, our political leaders, and then obviously of public sector and private sector organisations and of the people that work in them to be able to work together to move forward to try and make a positive impact on how we can sustain not just the planet, but also our own organisations and jobs, I suppose. So let's be optimistic about that. I'm looking forward to seeing the government strategy around its own climate goals and strategies. So, and we'll see how that impacts. But it looks like you've had a very enjoyable career learning and developing over the various industries you worked in, and that you are in a very exciting position just now with Balfour Beatty going forward. Thank you very much, Jim. And any final thoughts?
Just I think that on COP26, I'm hopeful that we move away from just pledges to actions that actually start immediately making a difference.
We need to move from climate discussions to climate action. Okay. It's a good positive note to finish on. Thanks very much, Jim, for your time, and it's been a real pleasure having a chat with you.
Thank you, Doug. Likewise.
Well, folks, that was our CEO, Doug Morwood, and Jim Brannan of Balfour Beatty discussing vision. We challenge our listeners this week to think about vision and what part it plays in navigating current disruption and an uncertain future. Links to both parties' social media channels can be found in the description. Tune in next Friday, where we'll be joined by another guest to look at context, understanding where we are now to create a solid foundation for a sustainable future.